Have you ever imagined living in the largest desert in the world, where it doesn't rain for over 50 years? And that also, in this same place, an eccentric dictator, ruled for over 40 years with a group of bodyguards formed by beautiful women? There, women cannot dance in public and are still prohibited from traveling without permission. In today's video in the world No Filter, let's explore one of the worst places to live in the world, Libya. Want to be part of a journey full of discoveries, fun and content that will surprise you? Subscribe to our channel by clicking here and don't miss any other video. The Sahara Desert hides impressive secrets. Despite being the largest hot desert in the world, did you know that it was once green and full of life? But these days, some regions of it have not been rained for over 50 years. Yeah, this immense and scorching place hides amazing mysteries, and even snow has fallen there. The Sahara is so large that it covers 11 countries from North Africa, including Egypt, Libya, Algeria and Morocco. It has 9 million square kilometers, which means they would fit Brazil and Argentina together inside it. Temperatures may exceed 50 degrees Celsius during the day, but at night they fall under zero. This extreme thermal shock happens because the sand cannot retain heat, turning the desert into a true oven of day and a freezer at night. Now you may be wondering, does it rain in the Sahara? The answer is yes, but rarely. Some parts of the desert have not seen a drop of rain for over 50 years. Sahara's darkest place is in the depression of Al-Kufu, Libya, where the last significant rain happened for decades. And the most amazing is that it has already snowed in the Sahara. In 2018, Ain Sefra's Algerian city recorded a snow layer covering the dunes, scaring the entire population. The Sahara Desert was not always this sea of sand. It may seem unbelievable, but thousands of years ago, Sahara was a green paradise, full of lakes, forests and animals like elephants and giraffes. Studies show that a scent of 10,000 years ago, this desert was a savanna, inhabited by old tribes. So, what happened? The answer is simple. The weather simply changed. The winds and the rains moved, transforming the region into the dry desert we know today. But the traces of this time are still there. In some caves, archaeologists found rocky paintings of animals and people swimming, proving that there were rivers and lakes everywhere. Sahara still hides many mysteries. Scientists believe that under their dunes there may be lost cities, fossils of prehistoric creatures and even traces of ancient oceans. In addition, the desert has one of the greatest meteorites ever found on Earth, the Hoba meteorite, a giant space rock that has fallen for thousands of years. The Sahara Desert is much more than a warm and inhospitable place. It was once green, had lakes and rivers, and still keeps secrets that science continues to try to unravel. Which of these curiosities surprised you the most? Comment down here if you would have the courage to live in Sahara. Libya is one of the most conservative countries in the world, but some women have challenged power in unusual ways, from high-heeled protests to an elite army composed of women only. In 2011, while Libya was on fire in the revolution against Muammar Gaddafi, a group of women decided to speak in a very different way, dressed in elegant clothes, impeccable makeup and high heels. But why was this so impactful? Because, at the time, many women lived under strong repression, forced to dress with discretion and rarely had space in society to express themselves freely. The act of protesting was already dangerous, but doing it in high heels? This was a real challenge to the regime. Protesters wanted to prove that the struggle for freedom did not need to erase femininity. They showed the world that a woman can be strong and resistant without having to shape male standards. These scenes ran the world and helped reinforce the image of Libyan women as true warriors. Now, speaking of warriors, did you know that Muammar Gaddafi himself had a particular army of bodyguard-made bodyguard? Yes, they were known as Gaddafi's Amazon. These women were not just common security. They underwent intense training, learned to use heavy weapons and martial arts, and had the mission of protecting the dictator with their lives. He said that these women represented feminine liberation in Libya, but in fact everything was part of their eccentricity and cult of their own personality. Legend has it that one of the Amazon really sacrificed his life for him, jumping in front of a shot during an ambush. But when Gaddafi fell, many of these women suffered persecution and reprisals, being forced to flee or hide their identity. Libya's history is full of bizarre curiosities and women who challenged fate in surprising ways. On the one hand, the protesters who fought for the freedom of high heels, on the other, the Amazon, who served one of the most controversial dictators in the world. Don't forget to enjoy this video and subscribe to the channel, it helps us bring more videos like this to you. Have you ever imagined living in a place where you simply move to the sound of music can endanger you? Yeah, in Libya, women are prohibited from dancing in public. It sounds like something from another century, but this is the reality for many women in the country, which face strict rules and an extremely conservative society. But why does this ban exist? What happens if a woman is catching dancing? And is there any way to circumvent this rule? Today, let's dive into this surreal story. In Libya, female dance is seen as an act of dishonor and immorality. In public places, any woman who is caught dancing can be rebuked, threatened and even punished. This is because the country is governed by Sharia-based laws, a set of Islamic rules that impose severe restrictions on how women should behave. But don't stop there, even private parties are watched. Often, police or militias invade events to ensure that no woman is behaving inappropriately. During the regime of dictator Muammar Gaddafi, women had more freedom in some respects, but they could not dance freely. The difference is that at that time there were some authorized cultural presentations where women could participate, as long as they followed strict rules. But after Gaddafi's fall in 2011, the country plunged into chaos, and extremist groups began to impose even more severe laws, further restricting women's rights. Even with all prohibitions, many women refused to give up dance. In larger cities such as Tripoli and Benghazi, some organize clandestine parties, where they can dance freely away from the eyes of society. Another form of resistance is through dance indoors. Many Libyans teach their daughters how to dancing hidden, keeping a cultural tradition alive that the government tries to erase. The prohibition of dance in Libya is not just a strange rule, but a reflection of the oppression that women face daily. Even so, many continue to fight, finding ways to express their freedom away from the eyes of the world. Have you ever imagined living in a place where even dancing can be dangerous? Comment down here. Imagine wanting to travel to another country, get out of town or even make a simple journey within your own country, and need a man's permission to do so. Does it seem absurd? For this is the reality of women in Libya, one of the most restrictive countries in the world when it comes to female rights. But why does this rule exist? What happens if a woman tries to travel without permission? And is there any way to circumvent this ban? That's what we'll find out now. In Libya, women cannot travel abroad without the permission of a family man. This means that if a woman wants to take an international flight, she needs the approval of a father, brother or husband. And the problem doesn't stop there. In many regions, even trips within the country are prohibited without a male guardian. This rule was reinforced in 2017, when a government decree prohibited women under 60 years of traveling unaccompanied. The justification? Supposedly, it would be to protect the moral from society. But in practice, this restriction serves only to control women's lives and limit their freedom. If a woman tries to travel without permission, she can be barred at the airport or even detained. In some cases, even immigration employees may refuse to let it board. There have been reports of women who managed to escape these rules, but when they returned to Libya, they were punished or rejected by their own family. This restriction does not only affect leisure, but also education and work. Many Libyan women who want to study abroad or look for better opportunities simply can't because they depend on a man's permission. In addition, many companies avoid hiring women for positions that require travel, which further limits their professional opportunities. Even with all these restrictions, some women try to find ways to travel without being barred. Some convince relatives to sign the authorization, others use political connections to obtain special permission, and some simply try to cross borders clandestinely. However, while the country is under an unstable government and influenced by extremist groups, these oppressive rules will hardly change. Traveling alone is something that many people consider normal, but for women in Libya, this is a denied privilege. These restrictions are just a reflection of inequality and rigid control over women's lives in the country. And have you ever imagined living in a place where even to travel, you need a permission? Comment down here if you would accept to live like this. Libya is one of the largest countries in Africa in territorial extension, occupying about 1.76 million square kilometers. However, most of its land is covered by arid deserts, including vast areas of Sahara. This geographical condition makes the country's population density extremely low, focusing mainly on the Mediterranean coast, where living conditions are most favorable. Libya's climate is predominantly desert, characterized by extreme temperatures and low rainfall. During summer, temperatures can easily exceed 45 degrees Celsius, while in winter, especially in the mountainous regions, there are much milder temperatures. Due to water scarcity, agriculture is quite limited, with most agricultural production occurring in oases and irrigated land near the coast. Despite these natural limitations, Libya has one of the largest oil reserves in the world, being the main source of its economy. Oil was discovered in the country in the 1950s and since then has become the basis of national wealth. It is estimated that the country has more than 48 billion barrels of proven reserves, placing Libya among the largest producers in Africa. In addition to oil, natural gas also plays a crucial role in the country's energy matrix. Oil exploration has brought significant economic growth to Libya over the decades, allowing investments in infrastructure and public services. However, this extreme dependence on the oil sector has also made the country vulnerable to ranges in barrel price and political crises affecting its export capacity. With post-Gaddafi instability, oil production has dropped dramatically as armed groups often control oil fields and impose export blockages. In addition to fossil fuels, Libya also has mineral resources such as iron, plaster, and limestone, although its exploitation is limited due to the lack of adequate infrastructure. The potential for renewable energy, such as solar and wind, is also high, considering the incidence of sun throughout the year and the wide length of uninhabited lands. However, investments in this area are still incipient and face loyal and political challenges. Another relevant geographical aspect is Libya's strategic location. Located in North Africa, with an extensive coast bathed by the Mediterranean Sea, the country has a privileged position for trade and maritime transport. Historically, this location made Libya a point of interest to different civilizations and empires, from the Phoenicians and Romans to the modern colonial powers. Today, this same position makes Libya an important point of passage for immigrants trying to reach Europe through the Mediterranean, a phenomenon that has generated significant humanitarian challenges and politicians. In short, Libya's geography presents a mix of challenges and opportunities. Its immense desert territory imposes limitations on internal development, while its natural riches offer undeniable economic potential. However, political instability and almost exclusive dependence on oil make management of these resources a great challenge. The future of the country will depend on its ability to diversify its economy, stabilize its government, and find sustainable ways to take advantage of its natural riches without compromising its sovereignty. Daily life in Libya is a reflection of the difficulties and resilience of its people. Amid instability, the population seeks ways to maintain a sense of normality. Large cities like Tripoli and Benghazi remain busy, with local markets, informal trade growing and religious activities playing a central role in people's routine. Urban infrastructure still has signs of past conflicts. Many streets are deteriorated, damaged buildings remain visible scars of war, and access to basic services is limited. Hospitals face a lack of resources and medicines, while the education system suffers from the absence of appropriate investments. Security is a constant concern. In some regions, armed militias impose their own rules, hindering the mobility and freedom of citizens. Travel between cities can be dangerous, especially in areas controlled by extremist groups or rival factions. Despite the challenges, the spirit of community and solidarity remains strong. People gather in mosques for prayers, families share traditional meals, and small businesses try to survive economic difficulties. Many Libyans dream of a stable future, where they can rebuild their lives without the constant fear of violence. Libya's reality is still uncertain, but the resilience of its people remains one of the greatest assets for a more promising future. Libya has immense potential for economic and social development, but faces significant challenges to achieve stability. Its vast oil reserves could boost a rapid economic recovery if the country can establish a stable government and reduce the influence of armed groups. In addition, Libya's strategic location in the Mediterranean makes it a crucial point for international trade and external investments. On the other hand, political fragmentation remains a major obstacle. Without centralized and legitimate leadership, the reconstruction of infrastructure and the restoration of basic services become difficult tasks. Another challenge is the need for economic diversification, since excessive dependence on oil leaves the country vulnerable to global crises. The strengthening of democratic institutions, the fight against corruption, and the promotion of national reconciliation are essential steps to ensure a promising future for Libya. If you can overcome these difficulties, the country can become an example of resilience and sustainable growth in North Africa. Libya plays a strategic role in the global geopolitical board, which has become the target of multiple interventions over the decades. Since the fall of Gaddafi, several international powers, including the United States, the European Union, Russia, and the Middle Eastern countries, have tried to influence the country's future. However, these interferences were not always beneficial. The UN has played an active role in an attempt to establish a unified government in Libya, promoting peace conferences and supporting democratic elections. However, political fragmentation and resistance from armed groups make it difficult to implement any lasting agreement. UN missions in the country seek to create stability, but often face internal challenges such as corruption and distrust between rival factions. The European Union, in turn, sees Libya as a key point in the migratory crisis. The country serves as one of the main crossing routes for immigrants trying to reach Europe through the Mediterranean Sea. This led the EU to finance safety measures at the Libyan borders and even controversial agreements with local militias to contain the migratory flow. However, such policies are criticized by human rights organizations, which denounce abuses against migrants in Libyan detention centers. Russia and Turkey also play significant roles in the conflict. While Russia supports forces linked to General Khalifa Haftar, which controls much of the east of the country, Turkey provides military support to the international recognized government in Tripoli. This dispute of influence has further hindered Libya's stabilization, transforming it into an indirect battlefield for foreign interests. Libya's reconstruction will depend not only on internal efforts, but also on a balanced approach to the international community. Any external support should prioritize the country's sovereignty, preventing Libya from becoming only a pawn in global power games. If efforts are well coordinated and impartial, there is hope that Libya can overcome its crisis and build a stable and prosperous future. Libya's trajectory reflects the complexity of a resource-rich country, but constantly involved in political disputes and external interference. The instability that followed the fall of Gaddafi left deep marks, both in the governance structure and in the daily life of the population. Political fragmentation remains one of the main challenges for the country's reconstruction, with rival factions vying for power and making it difficult to consolidate a strong and legitimate central government. Despite the challenges, Libya still has immense potential for economic and social recovery. If you can overcome internal divisions and establish efficient governance, the country can turn its natural richness into concrete benefits for its population. Oil, which has historically been both a source of prosperity and a factor of instability, can be the key to a new start if its exploration is conducted in a transparent and sustainable manner. Economic diversification also presents itself as an urgent necessity. Reducing dependence on the oil sector and investing in infrastructure, technology and education are key steps to ensure a more stable future. In addition, Libya needs to strengthen its democratic institutions, combat corruption and promote national reconciliation to restore the population's confidence in government. The international community can play an important role in this process, offering diplomatic and economic support to help in reconstruction of the country. However, any external intervention should be conducted with respect to Libyan sovereignty and without imposing interests that may further compromise their stability. Thanks for staying with us here. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel, it helps us bring more content like this to you. Until the next video.